So I guess it's the first one, right?
Yep.
First one. Uh, I've been doing research on podcasts, and usually they have like this big elaborate introduction. So I was going through stuff on YouTube and how to make podcasts and everything like that. And after a while, you're going crazy, and you're like, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that. But then after a while, like we discussed before, let's just wing it, man. That's the
Just
only way.
just start and flow with
Just
it.
start to flow with it. So, since this first episode is usually, introduction, I was like, let's just past introduction. I think I'll save that for episode 2 or something like that. Let's just get into wherever we'll get into. And it's usually uh, the reason why I have this podcast is, I see everybody doing it, and I feel like, maybe I should do one. And then it also reminded me of the interview I did with my teacher, Sifu Richard Torres, last year on the history of JKD, and it felt that felt kind of comfortable. And I always told my teacher, yeah, we'll do another one, and everybody's asking me, oh, you should do another one. When are you going to do another history of JKD? And I'm thinking, what the reason why I did the history of JKD is just, I wanted people to know information about Bruce, and specifically about Jeet Kune Do. And people really don't know what Jeet Kune Do is. So you know what? Let's do this, man. So you tell me, what was the first time that you saw Bruce?
uh, Probably about 6, 7 years old. My older brother was he passed away in '96,
Oh, did he?
and yeah, and when you're young, I was like 6, 7 years old. He was about 5 years older than me, and everything that he does you kind of look up to, and you like the things that he's into, and he was really into martial arts. And
Right.
I remember sitting down and he would watch all the fight scenes of all these different movies, and the fight scene in Enter the Dragon was like one of his favorites. And
Yeah.
it's like, I mean, like, I watched it as a kid, and it's like, you play around, you imitate it, stuff like that, but like I didn't really come to appreciate it until I was like older. You know what I
Right.
mean? And then I go back and I start watching some of these things. And I'm like, wow, like it's no wonder why he was like so into this. It's because it's like ahead of its time, you know?
Yeah. What really actually I found it interesting about that with Bruce is just that when you look at him fight, like especially old clips of Bruce and even the movies, or like he's like astonishing, right? It's just
Mm-hmm.
like there's no one like him, and it's and like you think that even today when a lot of people do martial arts, and even if they trained like Bruce, or do the same regimen, or even go beyond what Bruce did back in the day, no one can no one's compared to Bruce at all. I mean, there are a lot of other you have other people saying, oh, this person is just like Bruce. I'm like, no, there's always going to be one Bruce Lee, man. There's not going to be another Bruce Lee. I mean, Bruce Lee is his own man, and it's kind of sad when you have like all these I would say imitators. I believe there's an imitator in another country. He had plastic surgery to look like Bruce, same haircut, and he's just like he's the Bruce Lee of this country. And it's just I'm like, like you stop and think. I'm like, why would you do that? Then this person won't have no identity. This
Mm-hmm.
person doesn't have it's just weird to me. I mean, we could all idolize Bruce, right? But the problem is, like, when you idolize somebody, it should have some stopping point. And it's and then when you become the person who you idolize, it's just like there's no who are you, right? And then when it comes down to Jeet Kune Do, you would not believe how many people who say they teach Jeet Kune Do, and they're doing all these movements from his movies. and they say this is Jeet Kune Do, and it's just it's weird, right? I mean, I don't know if you go on YouTube and you just, and there are a lot of Jeet Kune Do instructors who really believe that whatever they see in the movies, or Enter the Dragon, Wave the Dragon, and is what Bruce actually taught during his lifetime. And
Yeah.
people, and what's sad about it is people don't know the difference. They don't know reality versus Hollywood,
Hmm.
right? Actually, there was a seminar. I went to Seattle, I mean, about 3 or 4 years ago with my teacher. And well, okay, so it was like a Jeet Kune Do seminar. So we went, and believe it or not, there was this guy who was dressed like Bruce Lee, haircut and all, tank top. I am not lying to you. He had tank top, and he had, when we started training, you hear the whoa, all that stuff, and it's just like, this is
Oh man.
what is this, man? And then you have the Jeet Kune Do instructor who was doing the seminar. He would walk over. He would
Hmm.
teach him. It's just the fact that when you're trying to be somebody else, right? And it shows, and it's like, man, who are you? You know, and that's what Bruce was trying to convey. Like, who, be express yourself. You're honestly expressing yourself. With this guy who's imitating Bruce, he's not honestly expressing himself. He's honestly expressing himself as a lie.
Yeah.
That's an oxymoron right there. Or however that is. But you're not honestly expressing yourself.
He's like
And
portraying the expression of somebody else.
right, right.
Yeah.
The problem is with that, when it comes down to Bruce, everybody feels that they have some sort of connection with Bruce, and they want to express it in a way where everybody understands, or where everybody can see that Bruce is like a focal point in their life. That's fine. That's fine to know. Like, you need some sort of inspiration, but when it comes down to that, it takes over your whole identity, then you're going to get lost within it. You know, I feel that whenever we trained in Jeet Kune Do, when we train every Wednesday, I always make it to the point where I have you guys just, you know, not to be so robotic. It's more of expressing the tools that you're executing, right?
Yeah.
Some people get it confused, when they say, "Oh, expression." It's more like, "Oh, I could do whatever I want. I could be free of whatever." Okay, that's a different definition of expression. But expressing the tools, executing them, right? That's totally different, right? I
Yeah.
actually I actually have a clip that I want to share. So let's do this. So we go here. All right. Now this clip here is actually in Enter the Dragon. Since we're talking about Enter the Dragon before, is in the beginning. It's called Lao's Time. Oh, and in a quick story too. Me and my teacher, we went to Hong Kong in 2016. I actually there's another story two stories I want before I do this. So 2014, 2013, no, 2014. Me and my wife, we went to Hong Kong, and I felt bad because I was dragging her all over Hong Kong to to visit all these Bruce Lee sightings. There was this place called Lao's Time. So in Into the Dragon in Lao's Time, it's where Bruce was teaching this young man, you know, fighting.
Yeah. The student. Yep.
Yeah, the student, right?
Hmm.
So we had a taxi driver drive up this big hill, going all the way to the monastery where Bruce filmed this particular scene.
Okay.
And when we got into this taxi cab in Hong Kong. The taxi cabs are kind of small, but they take you anywhere. So we're going up this hill. So the hill starts to do like a hill, but it starts to incline.
Oh wow.
And it's just like it sounded like it was struggling. I'm like, oh man, we're gonna slip
Oh
back.
no.
And you have to realize too that Hong Kong is very the humidity is high. So you're gonna have some slippery like roads going up, right?
Yeah.
So this car's going up, and it's just like you could hear the engine like. "Rrrr." I'm like, oh man, we're gonna we're not gonna make it, but we do make it all the way on top. All right, so we give the money to the taxi driver, and he drives off. So to me, and my wife at the monastery. So unfortunately, we're looking around for that scene Laos time, and my poor wife, man, she's getting frustrated. She's getting mad. She's asking me, "Do you know where this is?" And I'm like, I was getting upset too. I was like, "Oh man, I brought her up here because the drive going to the monastery was long. We didn't know we can take the train, but we took the cab."
Oh wow.
And you could see in my wife's face, she was getting worried. I was like, "Oh man," I didn't want to make her experience in Hong Kong, a bad
Yeah.
one, right? So okay, so we're at this monastery, right? We're walking around. My wife's like, "Oh, why don't we go up there? Maybe it's up there." I'm like, "No." So we're going all the way around the monastery, and maybe a good hour went by, and it's like half raining, half hot, and it's just like, oh man. And then I was like, you know what? Let's just go. All right. So we went down the hill that was like on a big incline, and it's like you have stray dogs running around, and my wife was like, nope, we're not doing
Oh
this again.
no.
Yeah. So okay, that's the first time. Now the second time we went to Hong Kong was with my teacher and my friend from the Netherlands, James Terbeek. So we got to the monastery again. All right. So we went to the monastery all the way up. Again, I could not find a place. I was getting mad. So this is what I did. So instead of us having the taxi cab go all the way up to the monastery, we actually walked up the road, just going up, right? And then you have side forest, like trees, whatever. You have houses on the side. Imagine me going in and out of the trees and all this other stuff. I'm going within the woods, and
Trying to find
I'm
one
trying to
specific spot.
right. I'm getting scratches. I'm getting mosquito bites. I'm sweating. And I'm like, nah, I'm not gonna come here the second time and
And
not find this place. Right. So okay. So I'm going on this place, and I'm getting mad because like I brought my teacher here, to have a good experience in Hong Kong because it was actually his first time in Hong Kong. And I'm like, no, I don't want to disappoint another person like I did with my wife. So what I was doing, I was like, every road during the road, every place that I saw, like, okay, could be here. I'll go myself and I'll look. So I was looking, couldn't find it. Walked up again, look on the other side, couldn't find it. I went behind houses. I, I saw stray dogs, probably the same dogs I saw 2 years previous. So we're walking, and we finally reached up to the monastery, right? And then, great view and all. And then again, even my teacher's like, "Oh, why don't we go up there?" I'm like, "Oh, I don't know," And then I'm thinking, in my head, back in my mind, I'm like, maybe it's there. But what happens? I was like, "Nah, maybe it's around here," right? So we're walking, and could not find it. So, make a long story short, it's just we're going down the hill. I'm pissed. My teacher said, "Listen," he's like, "don't worry about it. We're experiencing what other people are not experiencing. And it's just like it's fine. We'll we'll do it again. When we
yeah.
come back." I'm like, like it just put my mind at ease. But then I was just disappointed because I myself personally couldn't find it.
Yeah.
I was like, I mean, maybe third time's the charm. Maybe when we go, or maybe as a class, we could all go to Hong Kong and just try to find this place, whatever. Okay, so on to this thing here. I actually really wanted to share.
What was that? An exhibition? We need emotional content. Try again.
Okay, so when I was talking about people imitating Bruce, and when people tend to forget about themselves there when he talks about expression, right? And when he talks about emotional content, for number one, you can't express somebody else's expression,
Hmm.
right? Because it's not real,
Yeah,
right?
it
Because
can't be
it
authentic if it's not coming from yourself.
exactly, it's not authentic. And when Bruce talked about in this clip about emotional content, it's all about movement, right? So people say, oh, emotional content is like you get in there with your emotions, you fight, it's like that's not really true. It's more of emotional content is more of intent, right? Like more of like I'm going to kick this guy's knee if it's the last thing I do. That's the emotional content, not more like the angry type.
Yeah,
That's
it's not just pure fury.
right. So let me go back to this clip again.
I said emotional content, not anger. Now try again. With me.
So what Bruce told Laos that when he tried it the second time, he did it with anger,
Hmm.
right? So when he did it with anger, Bruce even mentioned it, not anger, and that's what people feel what emotional content is. It's about anger. It's not, and using that type of emotion will get you killed because you're not thinking, right? So with the emotional content that Bruce was talking about, like I said, was it's the intent that you want to do something to this person. Well, we're talking about in combat, of course,
Yeah,
and we're talking about like breaking. I'm going to break this guy's leg. That's the intent, and it's
there's
the
a forceful drive
right,
without being angry, because when you're angry, it's gonna force you into making mistakes. It's gonna leave little vulnerabilities that could be um, uh, picked on. That's not the
right,
word I'm looking for, but you know what I mean. Yeah.
and the problem is when people talk about Jeet Kune Do is that they feel that this Jeet Kune Do is more of like a freestyle type of martial art, right? So when people bring other martial arts into Jeet Kune Do, it's an idea of a person's movement and effectiveness. But is it effective according to the human body, to the science of the human body? You're using somebody else's idea of effectiveness, right? So when that comes down to the point where, okay, what's real? Okay, for Jeet Kune Do, well, what's real? The science.
Yeah.
The science is real. And here's another one I want to share. Let me get this out the way.
Yeah, I got no audio on
You
my
got no
end.
audio? Okay, hold
Yeah.
on. Let me see if it goes up a little bit high. No audio? You can't hear it?
Yeah, no, I'm not here.
Hold on. Let me play it. Let me play it, and then I'll let you know what he says. All right.
I could probably tell it back to you word for word. That's how well I know
you know, you
it.
know, you know what's funny? You know what's funny? When I was younger, I used to leave the volume, mute the volume, right? And when
Hmm.
Enter the Dragon played, I said word for word per word, maybe almost to the middle of the movie.
Oh
Word,
wow.
yeah. That's what I used to do because it's like I love this movie so much. I said
Yeah.
the word per word, even in Bruce's accent,
Oh really?
because because Bruce had that he articulated every word. Okay,
Yeah.
unfortunately, with this scene, it wasn't him. It's somebody else.
Ah,
Yeah, that's what's disappointing about it. People don't.
that's got to be kind of hard to do, trying to voice over somebody else's mouth movement and
Oh yeah,
getting it timed up exactly, because I mean, it looks pretty like on point.
yeah. That's
Like
what I mean.
if I was trying to do that, it would look like one of those old school horribly dubbed.
All right. Okay. So, all right. So he's Bruce is with the abbot. I'm going to play it right here, and then I'll let you know what he says. Okay. So let me go. Let me go back a little bit here.
I have several questions. What is the highest technique you hope to achieve?
To have no technique.
Okay. So what he says that what is the highest technique you hope to achieve?
To have no technique.
And Bruce says, to have no technique. What I see, like there's people define technique as different things. You know, I see technique as a series of movements. Some people feel that a technique is this particular one movement. So when Bruce said the highest, you know, to have no technique, I don't know. I don't know if I mentioned to you or if you remember that, you know, techniques are not going to win or not going to survive a fight. It's the tools. So the way that you've been, you know, you're consistently working on those tools, sometimes the techniques can stop abruptly, right? And it's your ability to adapt with the tools is going to help you survive that fight.
Yeah.
So that's what Bruce is talking about, to have no technique. Because that's the highest form, because you could have a lot of techniques, but is it efficient? There was a video actually by this JKD instructor, Bert Richardson. And he did a video of this person grappling him. So when the person was on top of him, like, you know, trying to, you know, grapple him, whatever, Bert took out a plastic gun and put it to the guy's ribs. And then the guy's like, oh, I didn't see that there.
Yeah.
And this is what
But
I've
that
been.
can happen.
That can happen.
Yep.
All right. So again, we come back to what's real and what's fake. Can anybody really honestly believe that when it comes down to fighting in the street, set by particular limitations of their martial arts, which people don't feel that there are, can honestly survive a fight? Like for instance, boxing.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that you don't grapple, you don't kick, you just use the hands predominantly.
Yeah. It's
right?
very, very restricted.
Correct. Very restrictive, right? So it's just an understanding of what Bruce was conveying to his student, you know, not anger, right? Emotional content, you know, and it's just when people feel that they like to imitate Bruce, right? They're so involved of an image that they get lost within that image and don't know the real of how they portray themselves, right? And I always use martial arts and Jeet Kune Do to utilize in my life, or you know, however, whatever situation that I'm in. You know, there's always about simple, direct, and non-classical. I always keep it simple. You know, I try not to beat around the bush. I just say it direct. You know, and whenever things come up, you know, sometimes the traditional way doesn't work. I do something out of the ordinary, and it gets things done.
You know, one of the quotes, use what is useful, discard what is useless, and add essentially what is your own.
Right.
I feel like is a quote that actually can be applied to so many aspects of your life, not just martial arts, but like you can add it in like, if you're cooking, you can use that and apply it to that. If you're working, you know, use what's useful and discard like, okay, this isn't helpful, so don't do that. And sometimes, you know, when it says add essentially what is your own is not useful sometimes. So sometimes you even have to discard, you know, like, oh yeah, I like this, but it's not helpful. So, you know, you can't really misinterpret the saying, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but there's a lot of different things that can apply to. And, you know, another one that I really like is, I actually have it on my Instagram. It says, I'm not in this world to live up to your
Uh-huh.
expectations, and you're not in this world to live
To
up to
live up
mine.
to mine. Correct.
Yes.
Now,
So
go ahead.
no, but that's like another one that, like, it's kind of like, stop trying to please so many people in your life. Like, I understand some of the closer people in your life, but like sometimes you see people out there that are doing things to impress strangers that they've
Hmm.
never even met and will have no recognition for. It's like, why do you
Try to impress.
exactly? You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Just be you.
Yeah.
Like, you know?
Wait,
So
I don't want to disappoint you, but the first quote,
yeah,
absorb what is useful, that's not from Bruce.
it isn't.
No, it's actually
Really?
it's a quote that Bruce took. I can't
Okay.
remember the person's name, but he actually he actually took that quote and wrote it in one of Dan Inosanto's books.
Ah, really?
Yeah, but it's not from him.
Okay.
So I have to get the real story from that. But
That's good to know. Like,
yeah,
I've seen it in documentaries and stuff,
yes.
but like, you know,
So that's why, in Enter the Dragon, the reason why this movie is so good is because Bruce was himself, right?
yeah.
There was an interview, or I think an article that I read, that when Bruce was doing the Green Hornet, when he was Kato, or I think it was an interview, he was like, he was not him. Like he was not, when he was Kato, he was not being himself,
He
right?
was playing a part.
He was playing a part and he felt like he had to play that part all the time. And he wasn't, it wasn't real to him, right?
Hmm.
So in Into the Dragon, that was all him. It was like he knew what he was doing. He was being himself. He was expressing himself, meaning he was expressing all these movements. And with the camera, he's doing all these wide angle shots, these wide shots, and realistically, you don't really do it. But then that was him expressing himself as an actor. But then it was just like you could see not the more of the emotional content, it's more of the passion of what he had as an actor and bringing martial arts to the forefront. People say, oh, he wasn't using Jeet Kune Do in the movie and all this stuff. Like, yes and no, but he was being himself. He wasn't imitating anybody else. He was being himself, right? So not trying to be, a philosopher and all this, but then some people have to really sit down and think about these things. The problem is that when they hear something from Bruce, it's the ultimate, the gospel truth, but then you have to, like, okay, why did he say this? You have to question it. That's why I ask you guys, tell you guys to question, whatever I'm teaching you guys, because if it doesn't make sense to you, okay, let's do
Break
it
it
this,
down.
yeah, break it down, let's do this
Yeah.
together, so it makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, then I failed as a teacher, right? So there's a pros and cons of whatever we do, but as long as we're expressing ourselves, that's the deal. Us as being a person that's real, not as a person as being Bruce Lee or being Michael Jordan or being Michael Jackson, whoever. Because of the fact that towards the end, you're going to lose yourself as a person. You know, there was a time when I was in another martial arts and we were doing this point sparring, and yeah, that's another episode of that too. But I'll go against it. It's actually a little kid. He was like maybe about up to my chin right here. And this kid was fast. And then I'm like, at that time, I was really have this heavy set. I all the time I moved, I was breathing heavy. But anyway, that's my beginning state. I think I'll do another episode of that. But however, so I'm going against this kid, and then it's kind of like I channeled Bruce Lee. So I started putting my hands up with my pinky and all this other stuff, like, and I was like getting into the, and then, at that time, I wanted to win this competition, this point sparring, which I did. I mean, this kid he wasn't as fast as he looked like him. But anyway, that's a kid. I don't want to talk about that stuff. However, when you think about it now, I wasn't being myself. I was channeling Bruce Lee. But how would I now do that with all the experience I've done or I have to win that point sparring? Right. So when we do the sparring in class, you're not imitating Bruce.
No,
You're doing it
not at all.
yourself. Not at all. We get it in there, right? You're imitating you, not imitating, I'm sorry, you're expressing yourself. Because when it's time to, when troubles are up in the air and there's nobody to imitate, it's just you.
What's your what's the quote that you find the most useful that you could apply that has affected you in your life?
Is it for Bruce or is it just any type of quote?
Why don't we do both?
Okay. I made up this quote a long time ago when I started martial arts. And there was this quote I made. It's called, "Be ready when you're not ready."
That's a good one.
Reason why I made that quote, I'm pretty sure it's somebody else's quote, but for me, be ready when you're not ready means that be ready, meaning that consistently train, right? Consistently punch, and then whenever you're not ready, you're ready when something happens. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
No, it does make sense.
Yeah.
You know.
And then there's a Bruce Lee quote. Is a change is a changeless state. All right. I think I hope I'm not paraphrasing it, but change is a changeless state, meaning it's going to change no matter what it is, right? Everything can't be in one constant path. The path is going to change. So with that in turn, you have to adapt, right? So like I said before, these techniques, they look great in these series of movements, but something's going to happen in that technique. You're going to have to adapt, right? And then when you adapt, you have to change your tools or use other tools, right? So when it comes down to it, be ready when you're not ready. You have to be ready when something unexpected happens. It's just a, a yin and yang. It's like
a good one though.
Yeah, it's like scientific, unscientific, and acting of what Bruce said in an interview before, but it goes hand in hand, right?
I mean, adaptability in itself is just an awesome concept because not only are you adapting by switching up your tactics or switching up your movements, or you would switch up certain situations just by you're adapting by changing your point of view,
Right.
looking at something from a different angle instead of seeing it in this kind of light. You adapt and you kind of switch how you're viewing things, and it's like, okay, maybe this isn't really like such a bad thing because you're looking at it from a different way now. You know what I mean? Where, also like take something from your past that you thought was bad at the time, but then like say a few years later you look back and you're like, wow, if that didn't happen to me, I wouldn't have learned this kind of lesson, or I wouldn't have, so so now like in the present, you can also adapt your point of view to certain things,
right? And that's experience.
Yeah.
Right. So when you mention like, the bad stuff that happened, that's, you got to look at it this way. That's that series of movement. And then something happened. You have to go the other direction. You have to change something. So that's why when I say, or what Bruce says is change is a changeless state. Again, I'm paraphrasing, but that's the quote. Because no matter how bad things can get, it's going to change. Or even how good things get, it's going to change. So you have to be ready when you're not ready,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's, and it's all about one thing. It's all about adaptability. That's what life is actually about.
Yeah.
So, I mean, hey, but this is us being expressing our life as we see it by adapting. Because I feel sometimes, people would like to conjure up, like I said, their inner Bruce Lee and all this stuff, and it's not real, And
Mm-hmm.
at that time, I didn't know it was real, but now it's like, okay, now I know it's not real. How would I be me? And that's why Bruce was questioning when he was Kato. He was like, I was not myself. How can I be me? And Enter the Dragon, the way, especially the Way of the Dragon, Bruce Lee directed, wrote, started, so he was being himself.
Yeah.
So all those funny moments, that's him expressing
Mm-hmm.
himself, right? Enter the Dragon, all this, the fight sequences, that was him being a martial artist, being a passionate actor, So I feel that, since this first episode is what I'm going to call it, Enter the Dragon, is more of an introduction to the Nucleus Initiative, the podcast, you know. So we'll end it like this, right? So I already put up an Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. So the Facebook and the Instagram is the Nucleus Initiative, and unfortunately on Twitter, it has like a limit of letters. So for Twitter is NI_original. So you can find us on all those three platforms. So also this podcast, this first episode, should be on Spotify, Apple, any other podcast platforms. So I guess that's it.
That's
So
awesome.
we should end off with like a last word. So what do you want to say?
Um, I don't know. Today is actually my anniversary.
Oh, happy anniversary.
Not my wedding anniversary, our
Okay.
dating anniversry.
Oh,
I still think that counts because we were together for that time. But you know, no, it's you know,
so again, guys, whoever's listening, check us out on those platforms, and I'll see you next episode.